Welcome back to another episode of Sports Medicine on Tap. My name is Brandon O'Line. I'm sitting at Neck of the Woods Brewing Company in Pittman, New Jersey with my good friend Dr. Frey. Dr. Frey, what's going on?
Not a whole heck of a lot.
Well, we're back on a lovely Tuesday night at Neck of the Woods, like I mentioned. Usual crowd. We don't have Brian behind the bar tonight.
No.
We got a good Phil and Chris. He's been hooking us up all night, as always. And I'd like to introduce our guest tonight. He's a good friend of mine, Dr. Zac White, the head athletic trainer for football at Temple University in Philadelphia. Zac and I go way back. We met almost 10 years ago now, which is wild to think about, right? We actually were roommates. We both were interns at Morgan State University for a short period of time. He started a little late and I left early, so we had a very short crossover. But we became friends. Like I said, we lived together for a few months, and then we parted ways, and then we ended up linking back up together, and we both were in Temple's DAT program. Mm-hmm. We were in the first ever cohort of DAT students from Temple.
Right.
Graduated.
That was the first ever?
First ever in 2018.
How about that, man?
Again, that was one of the reasons that we drew in. It's like, we mess up, they're not going to kick us out. They need us.
Yeah, they needed us, and we fulfilled that role. And
not the best philosophy.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, it was, it was one of those things that just kind of fell in the right place at the right time. At least for me, it was that July of that year, 2016, I guess, was when I applied to the program. Was in a conference and I saw an ad for a DAT program at ATC Still University, and I just looked in and I was like, that's kind of interesting. It's an interesting idea of like athletic training, where the profession's going. And then my buddy on Facebook said he was going to Temple and doing their DAT program. I was like, hey man, what's all that about? And he says, he gave me some contact information. I submitted my application super late to the program, but like they were trying to get a couple more numbers for the cohort.
Right. And
they let me slide in there, and then next thing you know, we're on online classes together every Monday night.
And the group chat is live again.
Yep, and the group chat is still live. We still, him and I and a couple other classmates, we still all talk to each other. So being an online program, we made some connections that obviously we had a personal connection prior to, because we lived together. We knew who each other were. But,
sure, yeah, you had to start.
Yeah. So that's my synopsis of Zac White, if you will. So Zac, if you will, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of background and kind of what you do.
Absolutely. But first, I got to call you out. If you're going to call me Dr. Zac White, you need to be Dr. Brandon Elia. Like, come on, put some respect on your name.
I was actually, as you're going through the whole story, I looked up behind you and I'm like, we have him down as ATC, not DAT. All right, like you're absolutely right. We need to rectify this. Sorry about that.
That's just my
that
being.
is you being you.
Yep. It's just. I just rolled the punches.
Letting it slide.
And it's funny, like, it comes in daily practice. People are like, you got a doctorate degree? I'm like, yeah, it's whatever. I do. It's just not my style.
Same thing.
Yeah.
We had one of our kids who goes, Dr. Zac. And he sees me smile. I was like, you like being called Dr. Zac, don't you, Zac? I was like, I smile because I'm talking to you, man. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not because you call me doctor. So.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
A little bit. But, so undergrad, East Carolina, worked at football and realized, man, I really enjoy football. Right. Got an internship. Worked with the Chiefs in 2012, and the only reason I mention that is because it literally ties us how we got together. Did my grad school at ECU again. Worked at a high school. Was the only AT there for 2 years working all the sports, so that was really fun. Got to see a lot of different injuries, not just football. You see volleyball, basketball, wrestling,
right.
all the fun stuff. And then I was looking for internships and the ability to get out to Morgan State, and moved in with Brandon in October. And like he said, he left early. We lived together for 3 months, but man, it felt like a long time.
Like one of those weird things. Like my time at Morgan State was only, I think, a total of 6 to 7 months. I was a year-long intern for the football team, and football, cheer, and I think I had one other sport, whatever the case was. But then one night I got a phone call from my brother, and he told me that his now wife was pregnant with my niece. And I was like, I don't want to be all the way in Baltimore 2.5 hours away. Like, right. I got to figure out a way to get back home.
Yep.
And so, it was just one of those things. I mean, it's kind of crazy where like the world of internships and graduate assistantships for athletic training is almost like so far gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So it's like the wild, wild west of athletic training. Like I don't mind saying it. Like I was on a $20,000 stipend for the year working at the place. So I was like, I'm sure I could find a job, make some more money, figure it out, full-time status.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I started working at Lincoln University following that January. Unfortunately, I did leave Zac behind, left him with the apartment and everything.
But it worked out because Josh then moved in.
Yep.
And
we had a rotation of like just when I left, the intern that they hired was a female. We had another female on staff, so the two females lived together. Then Zac and our other intern, Josh, moved in together. And it's just small world of how it all connects, right? Like the realty company that my dad worked for down in Maryland sold Josh's house that we knew. So he gave me a call one day. He's like, I got this guy you used to work with. I'm like, what are you talking about? And here it's a small world. And like he said, when he was an intern with the Kansas City Chiefs, he worked with a former student of mine that from Rowan alum, Vic, who's now at Penn, right?
Yeah, head football at Penn.
Head football at Penn. So it was a small connection, and then he was like, hey, you know Vic? And I was like, yeah, I know Vic. And then Vic was like, hey, you know Zach? And I was like, yeah. It was just so many ties of like random things of how Zach and I've just crossed paths, right? Like it just happens.
Right.
And even like we talked pre-shows, like we even had a crossing with this podcast, and Zach, without even knowing it, is when we had our guys from Protected on a few months back.
That's right.
He came down. He's like, oh yeah, I was just with your buddy in Philly. I'm like, excuse me? Like
Yeah.
you're with one of my friends in Philadelphia. What are you talking about? He goes, yeah, it's Zac White over at Temple. I'm like, oh yeah, I know Zach. Like,
Right.
And it was just again, just small world, and always just keeps coming back together.
Exactly.
Good guys. What was the project you're hoping to get them to work on for you a little bit?
So we had a guy this fall had a tragic injury. Like, obviously, you never want to see anything like that. He had a tib-fib fracture.
Yeah.
And he's returning back. Kid's fast as lightning. So it's really exciting to see him getting moving again, get his legs back under again. Because it's one of those things that how long do you anticipate a tib-fib fracture to get back to full run?
Not as long as you would think, actually. There's going to be some tenderness and a little bit of discomfort there, but typically they'll heal like 8 weeks, 12 weeks,
Right.
and then you can kind of get up and get running. And it's one of those things where, like, once you're healed and once you're up and running, you should be able to go like,
Right.
full speed ahead, like you don't miss a beat.
So this is where docs get us in trouble because they're like, 8 to 12 weeks, you're good to go.
Yeah.
But they don't take into consideration all that time off the leg that then
For
you have
sure.
to build all that
Atrophy,
muscle back.
You're 100%.
They
Yeah,
set me
yeah.
up for the okie doke. One of our docs are going to hear that and like, what's going on now? And I was like, come on, coach. This
Right.
And
what do you mean? It should have been like 4 weeks. What are you talking about?
exactly. What about the stuff we buy down there? What are you doing?
Right.
But got him back to start running full speed again, and just to give him a little more comfort and see if we can get like a custom pad for his shin. You know, I don't want to go to just the Dick's and buy like a soccer shin guard because all these kids are about swag these days.
Right.
And no one looks cool in soccer shin guards. Soccer players don't even look cool in soccer shin guards. They don't even wear them either. So it's
Some soccer players don't even wear them.
exactly. They
Yeah.
put like.
Folded up. I had a kid in recent years that had put folded up pieces of white tape in his shin guard,
Are you serious?
and
Because
he
it
had,
met the requirement of that big.
and made the little pad that looked like a thing, and he got injured by getting kicked in the shin,
Of course you did.
and he was on the ground writhing in pain. I'm like, listen, buddy,
Yeah.
you're wearing real shin guards now. We're not playing this tape game no more.
Yep.
That's for sure not.
To their credit, like good guys, right? Like
Great.
I think they will like the stuff they produce is excellent, and I think they'll be able to work with you and come up with something. you know?
Absolutely, and they've worked with us so much for our guys. And like, hey, we're talking about the met fracture that they need a little bit longer there. You don't want to you want to cover that met. And it's like, hey, can we bring it out an extra half inch over top and like go back and forth with some pictures, some drawing on the hand, and like, does this work? Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have nothing but good things about those guys, and like, we'll use them until they want to stop dealing with us.
Sure. Yeah.
And
yeah.
just their product and the stuff they put out, and just how cool it is. Like,
Right.
What, you can just use your phone and just go like this, and then like 2 days, like.
Pretty wild.
Especially administration or a coach comes in, like, what are you doing? Like, I'm scanning his cast, and it's just
Yeah, they're like, excuse me, what?
explode.
It'll be here in less than 2 days.
Right.
What? Like it just kind of compounds just like how amazing it is.
Right.
So before we go ahead and get forward, just want to give a quick shout out to one of our sponsors, Virtual Orthopedics and Spine. From runner's knee and dog walker's hip to yard work back and laptop wrist, they got a doc for that. Find the right specialist for you at virtua.org/ortho. Just like we mentioned, we need to find the right person when it comes to custom splints and casts, and you call the guys over at Protected like Zach's doing over at Temple just to get all that set up. So Virtua's got those docs for you guys out there who ever need it in the South Jersey area. So like we mentioned, Zach, you work at Temple. You're the head football AT there. I gotta ask, man, what was your journey like to Temple, and like why D1 football?
Right.
So I played sports my whole life growing up. My mom was, it sounds cliche or whatever, mom was community recreation.
Yeah.
So as soon as I was old enough to play soccer, basketball, baseball, like, you want to play? And I was like, yeah, let's play. Like, mom's going to be at the field all night long working, so why not go play the sport? And that's, mom always said, if you play the sport, you're going to finish the sport. And so I played sports all life, everything that we offered in rural North Carolina. So I didn't get to play like lacrosse or wrestle or anything like that because I was from a one-stop like county. But got in, just loved sports and being competitive. and then had a heart condition growing up. And so throughout middle school, high school, I kept having to go to see the cardiologist to make sure my heart was still good enough to play. I had a couple heart casts to check the gradient, everything was good, but they always like, college athletics, absolutely not. Like your
Really?
hard stop is high school, because it's just how much harder it gets. And so my way to stay in athletics was athletic training.
Sure.
My senior year, I started helping RAT out with the women's soccer team and giving like him hands, and he taught me how to tape ankles and do just basic first aid. And then got into East Carolina for their AT program. And initially I wanted to go to PT school, but then like chemistry was not my forte, and I realized I didn't have to take chemistry there at the time. And so I stayed in the AT route and football, and my brother played football at NC State. So it was like football was in our blood.
Sure.
And just that's what got me into it, and fell in love from the first time you go out there, and every second you're on edge because you don't know what's going to happen. But like it's almost like a rush. Like you're chasing it because you're like,
It's wild.
right?
It's exciting.
And then from there, internships, and got up to Al Bellamy, one of my mentors at Temple, and he helped me get to Syracuse after our DAT program was done. And we're kind of joking about this in pre-show that the only reason I've had my past 2 jobs is because of the Washington Commanders. They hired Hagi, our associate at the time, to be an associate there, or an athletic trainer with the Commanders. So I came back to Temple to take his role.
Right.
And then Al gets the head job at the Commanders, so I slide up into the head football job. So, it's always nice to be the captain of your own ship. But again, as we're talking, I miss treating people. I got to treat for about 2.5 hours today because we were swamped in the training room, and it was like euphoric at the end of the day. I was like, this is awesome. I've got to do with some soft tissue.
I'm going to delve into that a little bit then. So right now, for people who go to the athletic trainer route, I feel like it's a wide open world. Like it's sort of exploding, all these different opportunities that probably weren't conventionally thought of. Like I think way back when it was, if you go that route, you become an athletic trainer. Now you can work in an office, you can work at Amazon, you can work like there's a million different things you can. But now within the locker room, field, sort of treatment center, there's different levels. So I guess you have other athletic trainers working on you. They're doing the treating. They're actually treating based on what you're saying, and they're kind of reporting to you on a bunch of stuff.
So I have a pulse of the team, right? So I always interact with the guys as much as I can, because my worth to the team when it comes to them trusting us is them showing how much we care. And I tell them
absolutely
and I tell them all on their recruiting days, like, you have to care as much as we do, and we care a lot. So our whole job is to get you back on the field safe and feeling good, so then you can perform, and it doesn't affect your social life, it doesn't affect your academic life. Like, you're an athlete, that's your ego, like that's who you are. Like we want you to fulfill that, and so I have to have those relationships with guys. But on most days I end up in the office doing the injury report, talking to coaches, doing these other meetings, and so I don't get to do the fun part, the treating as much.
Sure. Yeah, the plus and the minus, and you're rising up, but then you have to give away a little bit of what you love.
Exactly.
Right, when you get that admin hat on, you got to do a lot more talking and a lot less treating.
Exactly.
It kind of comes with the territory a little bit.
And to go along with what you're saying about, like, you have to have the athlete's trust, because if not, the ship is sunk.
Right.
And I don't know if you listened to, we did a show not too long ago about some of the stuff that unraveled at Penn State, and like that's the crux of it, right? Like if the athlete doesn't know you have his or her best interest in mind, then like you're lost, right?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah, and I feel like I'm very similar. Like when I meet athletes, like, we'll match your intensity. If you want to come in here every day and really get better, we can do that. But if you're going to come in here every day, not really want to be here, not like really last day to go through your exercises, then like, you're going to get that benefit. You're going to get that result.
And you think about it though too, is not just the athlete, because you got to admit, 50% of the time that people are coming into the athletic training room, it's because they got injured in some aspect, whether it's their knee is a little achy, or they've had a major injury, right? It's somewhere in between the two,
right?
But they're there because something has negatively affected them, and so they're not bubbly, right? They're not super jazzed. So, but that's why we have to be super amped, because you got to bring everybody up with you. Like,
that's a good point.
Charisma is contagious, and like if you come out like jazz hands, people they might not come out the same, but like you can lift them a little bit.
Right.
If you can keep doing that, like you can't be an energy vampire in the training room, because if you come in sulking, dragging your feet, you're already tearing down other people.
Yeah. So. These are priceless. These are pearls here, man.
Yeah.
Energy vampire. Yeah.
No, I mean he
Awesome.
has a point. Like
Yeah.
if you don't, like you can just go through the motions and like it just doesn't go well. But if, like
No.
you bring that
Enthusiasm,
people,
excitement,
right. And like
you
he
know,
says, like
happiness.
it's tough being the person that has to be seen at the dark times or
Right.
the bad times all the
Right.
time. And like we just had the mental health talk not too long ago and all that stuff. And then you get to see that. You get to see them when they're at their lowest. You got to just lift them up a little bit. It's like, all right, we're no longer at our lowest. We're just
Right.
a step up.
Exactly.
We're on the way out of here.
Yeah.
And like you just got to be that little bit of a catalyst to get them from point A to point B. And it's tough because I remember one time I had a kid in a football game and a Liz Frank injury, and he was all freaking out. And I was like, "Look, buddy, we got you. We're here. We're gonna get the best care for you, or whatever." And then like months later, I forgot what I told him that night. He comes to me and goes, "Brandon, you know what got me through my rehab?" I'm like, "I have no idea. I don't know, you've been doing rough." He's like, "The night I got hurt, you told me you had my back, and you were gonna get me back on this field one way or another, no matter what it took."
Yeah.
I said, I guess I said that. Sure.
Sure.
I was in the heat of the moment, middle of
Yeah.
a game. I'm sure I said that. He goes, "But that's the only thing that kept me coming back because I knew you had my back." And I was like, "Oh wow." Those
It's
moments,
impactful.
those moments when you're like running like crazy and your mind's going wild, and you say something like really motivational, like, "Wow, that worked,"
Right.
like, and it came back and it took me, and I was like, "Well, I guess." Those moments when you're at your lowest and someone just tries to pick you up a little bit, it does make a big impact.
And without question, that the right frame of mind, right, impacts recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, going into it and just having the right approach, right frame of mind.
Right, because I mean, like, obviously, this is a very exaggerated example, but if someone gets really hurt, like, oh my God, you'll never be the same. Like,
Right.
it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, no, we got you, man. We'll figure this one out. You're in good hands. We're going to get through all this, and, whatever we got to do, we're going to get all the questions answered and all the T's crossed and all that stuff, and we'll be fine.
Right.
Sure.
And it goes a long, long way.
So now you went the traditional athletic training route, but now you've kind of also, risen up a little bit here. What does your day look like as opposed to, let's say, the guys that are working with you, under you, working with the football team?
So I kind of have molded our staff. Is a lot of places like this person is the insurance person, that person's a rehab person, that person's the maintenance person, whatever.
Right.
But what we found is there's so much turnover in athletic training these days that you can't have Brandon's this person, because when Brandon goes on the much needed vacation he needs
Yeah.
or a baby comes, like he has a kid, like
Right.
he's gonna go, and we cannot keep him here because that's gonna make him resent us, and we're gonna end up hiring somebody else. So I want him to go.
Yeah.
So everyone has to be able to do everything on my
Pitch in
staff.
and make sure we can do it.
Right. Now, how our day right now in the summer is, we open up at 6 o'clock is when treatments, mandatory treatments start for the 6:30 group. And then we get all those guys jazzed up and ready to go. And then I am the guy that's on the field with one of my other assistants. And because I just need to see how people are moving. That's not saying I don't trust my assistants and what they're saying, because the other two are inside doing all the rehabs, getting the 7:30 group ready and the 8:30 group ready. And so it's just my way to see, like, all right, I did see the limp there. We do need to address this. And then I'll report that to my staff, like, hey, we got to work on these couple things, clean this up, and we'll go good to go. And then so we have a 6:30 run, a 7:30 run, an 8:30 run, so all different groups. And then there's a little break where typically we have routes on air a couple days of the week. So then watching routes on air, like, got 3 receivers coming back from some injuries, so I get to watch them, how they go through. Like, oh, he looked really good today, or not so much here. Right. And I can kind of be, pull guys back as they need be. It's like, hey, you don't need to do this today. Like, come back, let's work on this and keep going forward. And then we go into our lift group start. So there's a 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 12 o'clock lift. And at that time, we're back inside working on people. And then obviously there's a run other days. So we lift Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And there's like a high needs lift on Tuesdays and something. And Thursday's just a competition day. And so like, there's all the waves throughout the week, right? But during that time, I do some treatments and do a whole bunch of admin stuff. Like, it's July 1, so fiscal budgets are up. So I sat and ordered
all kinds of stuff,
everything. Right? and so that's kind of what it is now. And then before the end of the day, I get an injury report ready, shoot it out to the on-call coach of the day, because this is the time where the coaches actually get some vacation.
Sure.
Because they've been recruiting for the past forever.
Right.
And so this is the time, like, we sit it there, so they're just updating, like, who's doing what, and they kind of bring everything back together, and typically out of the office by 4:30-ish. Now, sometimes we stay a little bit later to get some extra admin stuff done, or if we're working on a project and be like, I can just finish it now, and we'll stay a little bit later, stuff like that. So.
So is that
Legit days.
now? That's like your summer schedule,
Right.
You guys, what's your schedule like? Kind of like in season? Is it like morning based? Like you?
Yeah, we're a morning practice team. So in the office at like 5:30 ish to get set up for the day. Pre-practice taping officially starts at 6, but we encourage some guys to come in a little earlier just to thin the herd. Like,
Right.
you got 115 guys.
Right.
There's 6 of us.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Not
You can get here,
20
minutes
per
ahead.
person is
right.
a lot.
It's
still.
a lot. And then even in camp, we have a 6:30 a.m. staff meeting. So I get to tape for 30 minutes, literally sprint upstairs with a report, huff and puff as I get through anything that's walked in the door since 6 o'clock.
Right.
Sprint. This is the only time I don't have to sit through the full staff meeting. Like I sprint back out after I give my report to get back and start taping again before they go into meetings at 8, and then we're on the field at 9, off the field, 11-ish,
Yeah.
and then treatments go because it's a dead period. Once practice is over for at least, I believe it's 3 hours, and then they have some meetings, which that 3-hour dead period is all treatment
Right.
during
Right.
lunch, and then they have meetings again until dinner time. Then after dinner, they have like a team meeting. Again, during every meal, there's treatment sessions. But again, that's camp. But in season, similar to what we're practice schedule, but then like there's a 3:30 staff meeting, and typically after that, like I'm done for the day.
Right. It's a lot of work, man.
And
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, it's a
For
lifestyle.
sure, and it is, and those are long days. And I got to tell you, I was surprised to hear you say, we're a morning practice team, and it made me sort of rethink it. I wrestled when I went to Binghamton, and at that point it was Division III school. All right. Of course, now it's Division I. I like to ride the coattails, but when I was there, it was actually Division III school, and we'd have practice. We would get there. I don't remember 2 or 3, whatever it was, but it was in the afternoon. You'd go to classes during the day and whatnot. And there was always a couple classes like, you'd want to take this or you might want to take that, and you couldn't take it because it would overlap with practice time. And all right, so that's the end of that. I'll just figure out another route. But in my mind, I just assumed that's how it generally goes across the board. And part of me is wondering, is it individualized per school, or is this more of a D1 versus a D3 thing? Or
So there's actually a thing out into the ether that's like no team that's won a national championship practices in the morning.
is that right?
That's actually people will say
That's unbelievable.
right. So if you look it up, I'm
Whoa.
pretty sure it holds true. I can't guarantee that number, but it's like name a team that primarily practices in the morning if they've won a national championship. Can't really
That's
name
wild.
Shocking.
And
Shocking.
so,
and also answers the question. Right.
But we have to practice in the morning because Temple, as its origins, was a night school. So more classes are provided in the afternoon than in the morning.
How about that?
That's why we're the Temple Outs.
Right. Holy cow.
So little Temple history there
Yeah,
for you. So
that's very cool.
Because you're commuter school.
Right.
Everyone would commute in, so you have a little bit later stuff. And so that's why it works in our benefit. We get in the morning where it's a little bit cooler
Yeah.
because in the city it gets hot.
Oh, yeah.
And we're
The
on
air
turf.
doesn't go anywhere in the city.
Nowhere. Unless you're on Broad Street and it's like a wind tunnel.
Yeah.
But over on Diamond, not so much. But yeah, I really like a morning practice schedule because like guys, and we can talk about mental health, they seem to be more okay with that because it's not like they wake up all day, have to go to classes, and then what's practice is hanging over their head
Right.
all
Sure.
day.
Right.
Now they wake up, it's early, but you get practice out of the way, then you go to class and you're done for the day.
Right.
The hard part's over. Get
Right.
it out of the way.
I got to be honest. I'd probably sleep through a bunch of classes at that point. I mean,
It's hard getting guys in class. That's why you have so many class checkers and academic appointments.
Right.
And like, Teamworks has all these different things where you can check in that I'm here. Like,
right.
scan
But in
the
their
QR
defense,
code.
they're spent, man. They've just been practicing.
Right. And it never stops.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's generally always overlooked is like the schedule of a college student athlete.
Right. For
Like,
sure.
Between their normal class load, and then you get one of those kids who's a little overzealous and wants to be like a bio major,
Right.
and they have to take all these science classes, and they're like swamped with labs and like
Right.
actual like really hard stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
it ain't
and they're
easy.
gonna go try to practice for 2.5 hours a day
And lift.
and lift, then make their treatment if they roll their ankle in the
And
wrong place in time.
Eat 4 to 5 times because they're probably trying to gain weight or maintain weight and spending 4,000
try to have,
calories.
you know,
Maybe not if you're wrestling, but outside of that.
Yeah. Well,
Then try
they're
to have,
eating their
like,
ice chips and lettuce.
Then trying to have like a social life on top, like it's
Right.
it's a lot. And then you wonder why we dive down these roads of like this big era of, the mental health is so on the forefront of everyone's discussion, all this
Right.
stuff. Well, because there's a lot of things going on for these kids.
Right.
And sometimes they feel like they have nobody to support them because you don't get it. But it's no, there's luckily, like we mentioned before in our previous episode, there's a lot of resources out there.
Right.
But this is kind of the reason why, because they're just loaded up.
In the moment when they have all those balls in the air, that's a lot of pressure.
Right.
Then you
Don't-
throw,
don't see.
you throw simple stuff not simple, but injury,
Right.
anything family-related stressors or like life stress, social stress, and then you fail a test on something important, and it's like, oh man, it's just
Don't forget dating life.
right. Then it snowballs,
Right.
Yeah.
and it just keeps adding on, and they have these big breaks. It's like you wonder, they need a little intervention before all that stuff.
Right.
It's crazy.
And I mean, that's part of the new transformative committee thing is they're making it mandatory that everyone gets screened once a year
Right.
to help catch any yellow flags or red flags before it happens. We already see your mental health declining because survey 1 made it so you needed to take 2 because there's some iffiness, and 2 made you go 3. Now you're getting referred, and you have to go to sessions.
Right.
That's a new part of the process, which is awesome because you're catching that thing on the front end, and that's as you said, the biggest thing. Humans are so reactive in nature. Let's be a little proactive and prevent something.
Right. For once.
And I think that helps kind of twofold, right? You help be able to catch that ahead of time, and it's sometimes it's just the timing of it. I've had situations where you check their mental health questionnaire and hey man, what's going on? I hate saying this out loud, but my parents are getting divorced and I'm in college. It's kind of weird. It's okay, I get
Right.
it. You know what I mean? You got a lot of stuff going on. But then it also goes back to what we mentioned before is you take a minute, you call call a student athlete in your office and you're like, hey, look, you're not in trouble. It's kind of weird. I just sent you an email to come see me
Right.
with no context because I don't want to put it all. And then you talk to him and oh man, no one's actually asked me how I've been doing for a long time. It's oh, damn. Okay.
Right.
And then that builds that relationship with that person, and then something, when it hits the fan, if you will,
Right.
they come to you for something, and then you build that relationship, and then you meet them when they're a troubled freshman, and you see them graduate as an actual adult and a senior. You're like, yep, I did something right.
I help them. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of my associate, Bailey, she is phenomenal, and the amount of stuff that she's uncovered from guys holding it deep down by just going, hey, how are you doing today? What's up? Tell me what's going on. And she bebops around. She's got all this energy, and guys, something about it, they open up to her.
Sure.
And that's the fountain is oh, we'll go sit down and let's talk. And it's one of those things to help keep peeling back layers. All right. And you can't force anyone to go seek help. But we'll sit here and listen to you all the time. But if you need help, these are our on-campus resources. This is our athletics, wellness resources. All these people are here for you. Even if you want us to come, always, our door is open all the time. Come talk to us. But no, we try to give caveat. We're not the professionals. I'll sit here and listen to you until you turn blue into the face.
Yeah.
But if you looking to ever get help, let me know. I
Sure.
got you.
Right.
Yeah, and in that scenario, maybe things don't seem as desperate or bleak or hopeless because all of a sudden, there is an avenue. There's a lifeline.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
You at least give them something back here that I can go talk to the AT staff.
There's
Right.
an option. There's
Right.
an option. It's not that you're not alone in that situation.
100%.
And I mean, and that's again, I think I mentioned before, is the benefit of athletic trainers. We see our patients every day. You see them all the time. You see them on the good days, the bad days, the early days,
Right.
the late days.
But you get to know them in a way that that
Unbelievable.
nobody else does.
You know what kind of fuzzy blanket they bring on the bus trips and on the airplanes. You know everything about these kids,
Right.
everything, because you're with them all the time. So it's good to be that kind of support system, especially now. I think you probably see it more than I do at Temple is that you probably get kids from all over the place that aren't from Philly or aren't from the tri-state area. So these kids are not from home. They're way away from home, and they're dealing with all this stuff by themselves, and they don't know how to adult yet. It's
Right.
Oh,
freshmen are still all those going to be the same age. They're going to be those
God.
young
Yeah.
18-year-old kids who don't know anything. They think they know the world, and they just don't.
Right.
And then they hit a little adversity in real life stuff in college. They don't know who to turn to. It's like, hey man, and then everything kind of works out.
Exactly.
So yeah, in a similar vein of adversity in college and different things. One, I'm really excited about where we're going in just a minute, conversation-wise. But before we get to that topic, how has, and it's not brand new anymore, but NIL and the whole likeness. How has that impacted you? Does it impact you?
Right.
Does it impact your ability? Is there much more turnover? The portal with your athletes, you get to know your athletes. Does it impact your ability to treat the athletes in any way?
I think that's all based on your culture. What the culture that the head coach instills and that everyone buys into, from his coaching staff to the supporting staff that then bleeds into the team, that's what sets you aside and that makes NIL a non-factor, right?
Okay.
Now, the problem is at our level, anyone who shines, people from the big schools are coming and just throw, exactly, like they'll throw money at them. And again, you're 18 to 22 years old and someone says, I'll give you $100,000 to come play for us.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I get it. You're going to go chase the bag. Like, don't agree with it because now you're going to go sit behind somebody versus you were the dog here.
Yeah.
You got 80 reps a game or 30, 40 reps a game versus going there and you're getting 12.
Right.
Who do you think is going to get more exposure? The person in the Philadelphia media market that's not small, playing still good teams, or the person getting 4 snaps a game at a bigger school.
Right.
Just because you're getting paid, because they're paying you to be their backup, because depth drives success.
Right.
If the 1 goes down and the 2 is also good, they're going to do better.
Still do okay.
Exactly.
Not a bad insurance policy for those schools, right?
No doubt. But us, we're just seeing such a turnover. Like, we hold on to guys. I think coaches really instilled some good stuff and like digging his call. He calls it digging his claws, and the guys that keep them here and wanting them to stay, and knowing that like our culture is going to help them succeed just as much as anywhere else, and they'll thrive here. Because if you can survive Temple, you can survive anywhere. And I'm not saying that as a negative towards Temple, but like it's not easy because you're going to get here. You're in North Philly. Like, we have a chip on our shoulder. We're the tough dogs. But that has helped all our guys. Anyone that's gone to the league from us has shined, really.
Right.
That has really helped keep a lot of our talent. Now, unfortunately, we lose some good guys. And, do you get mad at them for leaving? No, it's sad. But, all right, good, best of luck to you.
Sure.
So you typically think you have a 125 man roster. You anticipate turning over about 30 a year.
Yeah.
Now we're about 55.
Holy cow!
Wow.
Turnover
That's
about
a
half
big
your
number.
roster. Yeah. And what you don't think about is how much that costs the program.
Yeah.
And we're not talking NIL cost the program. We're talking like as simple as clothes. Like, you have to re-outfit those guys. Knee braces for offensive and defensive linemen that we do. We're getting new knee braces for them because they're brand new to this team.
Right.
And they're not cheap by any means.
And so, like, you just think of these little things that, like, oh, it's not a big deal, but, like, the cost, same as any business, it's cheaper to retain somebody than it is to hire someone new. It's the same thing with us. And so, yeah, like, treating doesn't change. Like, we tell them on their OVs to come to us, like, this is how we operate and this is what's expected of you. We treat this like an NFL athletic training room. If you want to go to the NFL, you're going to abide by kind of how we work.
Right.
And that kind of gets us some buy-in at the front door. And then they see, like, oh, you guys mean that. Like, you put it on my calendar that if I'm late, I'm late, and I get in trouble. Like, you got to be here. Like, you're late to an NFL appointment, they're going to fine you.
Right.
We're not going to fine you here, but we're going to, like, there's going to be some kind of disciplinary action, right?
Yeah. It doesn't just get swept under the rug.
Right. You can't just do whatever you want.
Exactly.
Play
like, is it going to take some playing time away? Is it going to take some tickets away? Something like that. Like, however it's deemed necessary. Like, you have to buy into the old Bill Belichick. The Patriot way. Like, they get these guys and they get them in line.
Right. Like, there's a story of I forget the guy's name. There's a running back. I think his name was Sonny Gray or something Gray, and he was like on a tear for the Patriots. And he was like, he scored like 4 touchdowns in a game or whatever. Then he was late to a meeting the next day. He got benched.
Right.
He was like, for 3 weeks, he was like the best NFL running back. Yeah. And he was late, like 5 minutes late to a meeting. He got benched. And then that like derailed his whole career.
Right.
And just one of those things. It just happens. You got to be there on time and do your job and buy into the culture, and you can succeed.
Was it LSU or like Alabama? He was one of the big SEC schools, right?
I forget. I
Sonny
remember
Gray?
I saw it
Sonny
randomly.
Davis? Sonny Gray.
Sonny Gray, I think.
Sonny Gray.
Was
Yeah. All right, whatever. Sorry.
I'm bad at certain athletes' names. I was like, I remember that person was probably good. And, like, I can get some stats to it, but if it was not happening in recent times,
that makes sense. You got a whole squad of a bunch of people you worry about, and it's like it's a full year gig, so it makes a lot of sense. Why? It's funny when you see people like in just athletic training. Some people have no idea anything about pro sports. Like, nah, dude, I work basketball every time. Why would I watch an NBA game? Like, I get it.
But then you have the people that are encyclopedias, and you're like, how did you get all the stats from that game that was at 9 o'clock last night, tip-off?
Yeah.
Like, I was in bed at 8:30.
Yeah.
I'm like somewhere in the middle. I like a little bit of pro sports, but then I get caught up in my own life, and it's like, I can't focus on too many things. But then I do this show, and it's like I got to kind of know what happens in pro sports a little bit.
Part of what you got to do.
So this is the reason why I pay attention to pro sports, is what my reasoning is, right? I got to be able to talk about it.
So, all right, now head athletic trainer, football and golf at Temple. And so as you're going, any tidbits like philosophical tidbits that you feel like have carried you, if someone who has good fortune of going for an interview or stuff, things to focus on or talk about, and trying to help them get this job, whatever level it is going to be, and help them succeed in the job.
So I'll break that into two different parts.
Sure.
So like first with philosophy, and I'll go into like the interview tips.
Sure.
Philosophy, what's kind of like piqued my interest is like the fascial anatomy. Like I think everything is driven through the fascia, whether it's a muscle strain or tendon or something like that, like, or even a sprain, like
right.
It can all come back to the fascia. You treat that or some aspect of it, it'll go. And so a lot of our rehab philosophy goes through the CES principle, so the corrective exercise specialist, where it's, you prep the tissue, you activate, or what? Yeah, done forgot it. You warm up, you prep, you activate, you integrate. So it's basic. It's your basic part of any rehab class we took. But until someone just dumbed it down, put it in this line, like that makes so much sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I kind of do our philosophy now. Is you're going to warm up, you're going to do some kind of soft tissue, you're going to activate that muscle, get it firing, and then we're going to integrate it in some major movement patterns. And so we've got a lot of success. Like, movement is medicine, motion is lotion, like whatever you want to say to get guys going.
True.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And so that's how we, like, the days of stem and ice are gone.
Right.
Like, there's some time, like, you just pulled your hamstring, all right, get on the table, we'll put some ice on to make you feel good for 2 seconds, but we're doing some kind of BFR, we're going to get the stem going, we're getting this muscle, like, moving as fast as we can.
Right.
So that's why I say that's kind of how we look philosophically. When it comes to the interview, it starts your first clinical rotation.
Right.
What people don't understand is you are interviewing for your recommendation for your job.
Right.
Every second you're in routine, every time.
Whether you're with your preceptor, with your head coach, with your strength staff, from a student, they're going to remember, like, oh, you were like so-and-so. They were grinders. I always saw them sprinting across the field. They were always on top of things. You didn't see them being an energy vampire. Like, you saw great aspects of it because people are going to call people.
Right.
Like, if Brandon's not listed on someone's reference that's coming from Temple or you're coming from Rowan, I'm going to call Brandon, like, do you know this person?
Right.
Like, regardless, like, that's how it is.
Yeah.
So you always just have to keep that in mind, is you're not just there to learn, you're also interviewing.
Yeah.
Right.
And that carries with you through your whole career.
Yeah.
So,
You're in the fishbowl always.
Right.
Everybody's sort of watching,
right.
paying a little bit of attention, and if you do things real well, then it goes well.
Right.
And all it takes is, like, I don't want to say one mistake, because it's not like that, but a continued sort of presence of like apathy or coming up short, and it contaminates. People see it, and then you lose that benefit. You lose them as an advocate.
Right.
Right, and I mean, I don't think I've ever told a story on the podcast before, but like you said, like, as a student, it kind of starts your whole process. And that's, I mean, I remember I have one specific day that literally not derailed, but aligned my whole entire career going forward as a student. And it was my first ever rotation. I was over at Cumberland County College in Vineland, and I was working with our preceptor, and she had to go to a wedding in the afternoon. So we had two things that day. We had a cross-country meet and a soccer game. Cross-country meet, we worked together. She left. Men's soccer game came. There's a substitute coming in, and she was like, well, you're done for the day. I was like, well, no, I'll stay for the soccer game, and I'll help whoever comes in. And this way, if any injuries happen, I know about it. I'll just tell you, so there's no loss in communication. Lo and behold, the substitute athletic trainer was the then head athletic trainer for the Philadelphia Soul, a good friend of mine named Lamar. So I got to know him for the day. He dropped a business card. I called him, got an internship with the Philadelphia Soul. I did 1 year with him. The second year he left, and who fills in? Jason Kopech, our friend.
Right.
And I meet Jason Kopech, and Jason Kopech opens up all the doors of my career pretty much going forward. He gets me a job with NovaCare. When he was with NovaCare, he got me a job with Recon, and I met Dr. Frey. He started this podcast, and I took over for him, and then now we're here.
Right.
Like, it's just, you never know who you're going to meet in those
Exactly.
little things. It's just a matter of, like, even when you go to these conventions, you shake the right hands and meet the right people, have a beer with somebody. It's like, man, you don't know where that's going to go.
Right.
We were talking about Eric Kraft. He was head of orthopedics at Temple for a little while. He's down in Charlotte now.
Right.
We went to med school together. We were classmates. He was one of my roommates in med school. And to the point that you're making, we were in resident interviews, I don't know, whatever it was, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I'm looking through, we're doing it online with Zoom interview, and I have, application out in front of me, and I see that this one particular person rotated through Temple and spent time there, did some research and whatnot. Mid-interview, so Eric sent Eric a text. Hey, do you remember so and so? What are your thoughts? And like she was great. She was awesome. Like you want her. And this is not the official recommendation. This is not the. But that carries so much more weight. And sure enough, she matches, and then she's here.
It's those people that even like, I think it stands more out if someone they're not listed on their references, but they call you. Like, hey, like, we have a brief, like, we've hung out before, and I have your cell phone number. I'm just going to call you because I know this person's applying to your position, and I want them to get it. And they stand on the table and beat the door down, whatever you want to say, just to get them in your room.
Sure.
That, again, like I said, it just
goes a long way.
Big waves.
Yeah, and I think it's just invaluable, and I think students especially, whether it be residents, like you mentioned, or athletic training students, like, you're kind of always on that, you're always on the radar in a sense of, like, you're going to, like, what you do in your work ethic, how you hold yourself and everything, it carries over, because it's the same thing. Because then you don't want to be on the opposite side of that, and you get the phone call, it's like, oh yeah, they're good, they're all right, and then you don't like put an emphasis behind it just because they didn't have a good audition, if you will, and an audition is a 15-week semester. Like, there's plenty of time to show out, and if you just don't, then you can't be upset if you don't get that great recommendation to get that good job. It's just kind of how it happens.
So now, what are your thoughts on kind of like, I don't want to say earth-shattering, but what I think is kind of big, like tectonic plate type of shift the NCAA is taking on this one particular stance.
Yep.
The new news.
Rule.
Yeah.
So,
cannabis. Go ahead.
So just recently, again, the reporting of this is so new that, like, I don't even, like, usually I really have good references and good dates, but this is kind of loose. But in late June, the NCAA announced that they're removing marijuana or cannabis from their banned substance list for D1 sports.
Yeah.
And at first, I think it was reported as for football only and championships, and then like it later came out that it was kind of like across the board.
Right.
And now it's like, I think it's all D1, and then I think it's going to eventually probably trickle down D2, D3.
That's what I've read, that the expectation is D2, D3 will follow suit
And
shortly.
then I think it's kind of, as of now, the recommendation is that it's going to be pushed kind of to the university of like what their stance will be, and what, obviously, I think it also plays in a multi-factor thing of like how the legislation of marijuana use is just across the country, where it's legal recreationally and medically in various states.
Yeah, dramatic shifts, right?
It's a large majority, it's relatively legal, if you will, in some sort in most states, but then there's some states that it's not.
Right.
So that's where the NCAA is kind of like, they're kind of opening up a little bit and giving it the power to a little bit more of the university and taking it away from them. So I think it'll affect you way more than it affects me.
Yeah.
Right.
So first, how do you think it impacts you? And then two, how do you think it impacts your students?
So I guess
student athletes.
It all ties back to the first shift. I think it was in 2020 or 2021 when they
February 2022.
When they went from 0 nanograms on the test to 120.
Right.
And as we're kind of talking, like 120 nanograms per sample, whatever, I can't remember what it is a lot.
Right.
So they're not looking for the recreational user. They're not looking for the person that uses it every now and again or something like that. They're looking for the abuser.
Right.
And those are the people, and they're not looking, it's not a witch hunt. Those are the people they're looking to help.
Right.
They want to identify these people that are struggling, that are abusing, and need resources or intervention, if you will.
Right.
And so that was the whole point.
So I'm going to read you a quote right from the NCAA. Aims to recenter student-athlete health by promoting local testing and education to identify problematic cannabinoid use coupled with local harm reduction.
Right. And kind of like what we're saying in pre-show is it's not a PED.
Right.
If anything, you're hurting your performance. We all know, exactly. We know it affects your cognitive ability. It affects your tissue quality. There's a ton of things that it does that affects you harmfully, which again directly affects us three because that's job security. We're having more to do.
Sure.
And so that's the part that's like it's upsetting. Right, that like you have to find the abusers, and you can't just push guys like, hey, this is what's best for you. Just don't do it because it's affecting your ability to perform.
Right.
Some guys will buy into that because they're all in on their performance. Other people need a little extra boost. But that's the whole again, the transformative community. Like you're trying to identify something and give help.
Right.
And that's why I think when they're moving to the institutional ability, like, all right, guys, you'll test. at whatever discretion, whether it's going to be the university's discretion, a coach's discretion, a sport, whatever it is it going to be in their rules? Whose rules is it going to follow? Like you're saying, like it is still, it's a crapshoot. No one has any idea how it's going to go. And so I think it's going to take probably a full year plus before anything's even in Jello. I wouldn't say concrete. I wouldn't say water.
Yeah, Jello. Right.
It's going to be there. It's going to pop a little bit. Something's
starting to take a little bit of form.
Something's going to happen, and they're going to need to mold it a little differently
Right.
And then finally, it's like, all right, this is our policy. That's probably going to take 2 to 3 years.
Right.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And like I said, I mean, it was coming out like June 25th-ish, and it's now July 9th. It's almost been like 2 weeks, and there's still not even like a real concrete like statement or like just stuff that comes out that just explains the rules a little bit better. It's just still kind of out there. And even today, we were talking about it at work. We're just like, with these new rules coming out, like we don't know what they are yet, but they're on the doorstep. They're coming. And we're going to have to make sure we curtail it so it's doesn't affect our everyday, and it's not like you come into the training room and it like reeks and these kids are just doing whatever the heck they want.
Right.
You gotta kind of maintain it a little bit. So it's curious, very curious how it's all going to unfold.
And it can't be blanket, right? Because like you said, there are states where it's not legal recreationally, it's not legal medically. So it can't just be blanket across the board. The NCAA almost has to take a stance against it, or a stance of like accepting a little bit, but pushing it towards
and
individualized programs in schools and states.
Right, and it's like you said, like the state legislation is one thing, and then federally it just got kind of pushed down the class list, so it's not as deemed as high, as dangerous as like class 1 or class A. It's kind of moving down a couple steps, so it's not so aggressively like seemed, or like the stigma a little bit is changing as time goes on, and the NCAA is kind of forming it with it, and it just see what happens. I guess it's just. These things take a little bit of time. Developing a new policy for the NCAA across the board is not an easy feat by any means.
Do you think it comes off like a panel of a standard, one of the drugs standardly tested for if you're being like randomly tested? And
I think that's gone.
That's gone. And okay. And then so it's only if so then like it becomes very tricky. What drives the test? What is it?
Exactly.
You can't single somebody out.
You can. But you can, because it's a suspicion. If you're seeing traits, they're
but
getting
you have
late.
to have
You have to have suspicion.
documented. Like I would think there has to be something solid there to lean on in case that person takes offense and wants to make an issue of no, you just did, it becomes a very
and I think
tricky situation.
In this situation, it kind of ties it kind of like our whole conversation kind of comes to an apex here with this too. Like we talked about, we see these kids all the time. You know who they are, and if you know something catastrophic may have happened in their life, and then now they come in and they smell like it a little bit. They're acting a lot different.
Dropping weight.
They're dropping weight.
Big indicator.
They're changing their performance. They're changing. Like your whole your whole aura is just different. Maybe we got to intervene here because you're not using it. Like yes, it's prescribed for therapeutic use, but you're just like you said. You're not trying to identify those recreational users, the people who may be using medicinally. You want to look at those people who are just abusing it because they don't know what the heck they're doing. They're just using it to go completely numb for whatever the case is, and they're coming in, they're not being themselves.
That's problematic.
That's problematic, and that affects your everyday life, and that's when you need to intervene. I think it's kind of what it's probably going to look like, right? It's like you're going to just find those kids that no, you definitely changed. This is not you 2 months ago. Like something's changed. You're going and again, we mentioned those kids are freshmen or 18 years old. They're coming in, they don't know what they're doing. They haven't done all this stuff, and they go out and have all their fun and do whatever college kids do nowadays. And they start changing. Then you have to have someone who's going to be the adult step in and hey, we got to make sure this. You got to help you out a little bit. You're just going down a road that you don't want to go down.
No doubt.
I wonder if it impacts different schools and their sort of, the books and their policies across the board, right? Like non-athletic related, because those two things have to align, right? Like whatever the policy of the athletic program is going to be has to be in line with whatever the policy of the school is. So I don't know. It is very interesting to see.
Because
where's this all headed?
You have a school that's very no, you can't have it on campus, can't do anything. But then you have.
But it's okay if the athletes.
But the athletes do it.
Moderate amount.
Then,
right. So that was one of my mentors. I don't want to reveal who they are, but that was the thing. Like how do you test athletes when you're not testing students? if it's okay for the
Right.
students on campus and they're student, I
Right.
get NCAA, they're supposed to be held to
Right.
concern, but like if you're not testing students
Yeah.
randomly,
Right.
why are you testing your student athletes randomly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Legitimate argument.
If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. It's got to be both ways. You got to treat everyone the same at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
That's
good
in the
point.
whole nother level right there.
Right.
Because that takes it that the whole nother like department.
100%.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's one of those things that kind of just wait and see. And I think in your world, it'll probably mean a lot of meetings and a lot of talking with different people, different hats in the university,
Yep,
and like
for
all,
sure.
then it could even go, school level. Then you kind of maybe even bump it to like conference level, what your conference does, and then and after a certain point, you hit the top and you go NCAA. Well, we know what they say, so you got to back down a little bit.
They're
and kinda
pushing it
like-
back
yeah.
towards us.
Right. So at one point, you're gonna hit a wall, and then you got to kind of revert back. And it's not similar, but it reminds me of kind of like COVID, right? Like everybody didn't know what was going on with
Right.
COVID. The NCAA gave recommendations, and they said do whatever's best for you and your school. Then different schools had different resources and different funding, and then you would go to. I remember being in like the conference meetings, like, well, this is what we can do. And then one school's like, yeah, we don't have any of that manpower. We can't do any of that. We can't test kids every time they get on and off a bus or
Right.
whatever the case was back in the days of COVID, right? Like, it all depends what you have available to you.
Absolutely. And if you're requiring something, you got to pay for it. Like whatever institution is requiring whatever rules, they need to be the people paying for it.
Right.
Right. And then it all just ties back to money, business, and you run around circles like, all right, do what you want, and we'll have a good time, I guess. Like, I don't know. Like,
Well, see you later.
yeah, I don't know.
I don't envy your position as this unfolds. I think
Yeah.
it's going to set up some challenges for you.
No doubt, but like, if you always sit back and think about what's gonna suck,
Yeah.
versus like, if you just think of like, you need to prepare for something is one thing. But you're like, man, this is gonna suck. Versus like, look how cool all this other stuff is that we get to do. And like,
Yeah.
if you put
Very
that on
well
the back
said.
burner and you're aware of it, but you
Yeah.
don't stress about it. That's
Yeah.
the biggest thing. You've got to be aware of everything,
Right.
but you can't let it. It's like rocking in a rocking chair. No matter how much you do it, you're going nowhere. So like,
That's a good point.
It's that's bringing some jazz hands to the situation right there.
It's
That's
those
for sure.
Eastern North Carolina, sayings that just
Yeah. They roll off
rained
the
into
tongue.
my soul.
Oh, yeah. You have the best the best little one-liners sometimes.
That's
man.
fantastic.
What are your thoughts and what is, I guess, Temple's use of the Guardian caps and like the new? I know it came out this year for at least the NFL, and I kind of how the world of football kind of works is like NFL does something, then
Everybody
D1
follows.
does it, then D2 might do it later, and then D3 is like way down the line, and then we'll
Yep.
do it later. But I think this year is like the Guardian caps are optional or available to be used in games now.
Right.
So what's that like in the D1 world, and like what do you guys use them? Do you?
So we actually made. We took a while because again, admin, legal system, things like that, like using things like is it going to change the warranty on the helmets or things like that?
Right.
Like all these different hoops we had to navigate through because we didn't want to just hop on board and
Right.
mess ourselves up later down the line.
Right.
So there's a lot of again meetings, process, red tape you go through, and we actually are going with safer caps, and it's because the research out there is unreal with how much better they are than Guardian caps, and they look like a helmet. Like that's the nice thing is like you don't have to worry about the glancing blows because like Guardian caps, they're little nodules out there. So if they hit each other, you're worried about rotational
Yeah.
injuries. Versus the safer caps, it's a hard plastic
Right.
that still molds to it. And so Guardian caps protects you and you if you're both wearing them. Safer reduces the blow to you if only I'm wearing it. And so like in my mind, all right, if I just had the bigs wearing it and the high impact, the middle linebackers and running backs, tight ends, if they're the ones wearing it, all right, I can protect almost everybody at that
Right.
point.
Right.
And so we're going to have it available to everybody, but we're going to highly recommend it to our bigs who are not in certain helmets that already have their built-in protection and like other monitoring systems. So I'm pretty excited about it. We keep our concussions relatively low throughout a year. I'd say we're about, you're going to say 10, but it's
Give or take, it's football.
Right. And they're not too terrible. So I think if we can reduce that even more, like think of the man hours we get back in practice, things like that, I'm pretty excited about.
Right.
And if guys want to wear them in game, you'll notice like, man, that's a big helmet, but it's not like they're wearing a Guardian cap. If that makes sense. So
Right.
that's kind of my thoughts on safer. And the guys I've worked with through them are awesome. I again highly recommend them to anybody looking at it.
Yeah, I mean that's I don't think I've ever heard of it. If I saw it, I probably, oh yeah, those things. Yeah, it makes sense.
I don't know. I don't know that I would recognize it.
Yeah.
A guy from Alabama wore it in game last year.
Yeah.
A guy from NC State wore it in game last year. And I want to say a guy from NIU wore it in game last year. Don't quote me on 100%, but I'm fairly certain.
But it's not completely right. Like, and I think, I don't know, 5 to 10 years from now, it's going to be almost like kind of normal to see them all kind of way more often. And it's just like kind of the change in like, you know, the Speed Flex, the Rydell helmets that everyone's like started wearing and all the different. And I think, you know, they just keep coming out with these new helmets and these force accelerometers that you wear on your neck or on your head to kind of calculate G-forces on the head. All this technology is going to come out. But like you said, it's not so easy just like, oh, look at this new tech, let's just throw it on our guys. Like, there's a lot of red tape that you got to go through to use that at the university level, because there's a lot of legal stuff that you got to go through, like you said. It's just, I think also with that too, is like, a couple of mentors of mine said, you never want to be the first person to start something new. You never want to be the last person.
Right.
You want to be right in the middle. You want to catch the wave when it's right. You don't want to be the last person to do the new safety thing, because like, why weren't you being so safe for all those times? You don't want to be the new guy, especially if it flops. You're like, oh, it's my bad. Like, you don't want that either. So, see what happens.
Absolutely.
I'm going to end on one fun question for you.
All right.
I kind of threw it at the bottom, kind of knew I'm going to try to keep this up with guests, so you're going to be our first one, Zach, so good luck. If you were to have a beer with any athlete, past or present, who would it be and why?
Oh, my God. I feel like that's changed so much in my life. Like, you know, whether I'm big into baseball at some point, big into football at another point. Just because I think, like, where I am in, you know, being an old man in golf is like I'm watching it all the time and hearing stuff like that. Like, I'm, like, super interested in like Tiger Woods, and I get he's the hot button right now. Everyone wants to, because you know he's kind of in, he's sometimes out, like he's going through all these changes, right?
Without question.
But he changed golf,
Right?
Yeah.
Like he was the guy that went out there and brought strength training to golf,
Right.
And then he like has had all these injuries because how much force he was producing, and I just kind of want to like, I want to see like how. I just want to see all those little things, and just because you're having a beer with someone doesn't mean he's going to completely open up to you, but how cool would it be if he did?
Right. You got some inside scoop there. That's a good point. And it's like one of those guys, like those pioneer people who've like changed the sport.
Change the game. Absolutely.
You know, like very similar to like women's basketball. Caitlin Clark. Changing the game.
Yeah.
Completely changing the game, changing the whole thing. You know, Michael Jordan completely changed the game of basketball. And then you kind of generationally went to kind of past to Kobe, and then arguably passed to LeBron, and now we're waiting for the.
I just Steph Curry.
And Steph
Curry took it over too, and he arguably completely changed the way the game played. Like everyone shoots the 3-pointer now.
Totally
Before it was like
game,
totally not okay. They didn't even have a 3-point line back in the day. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that completely changes, and it's just interesting to see those pioneers. And I think you pick any of those people,
It's gonna be super interesting.
Super interesting. You know,
Yeah.
like how you did it for so long, how you did it for so well, and like you completely changed the face of a whole sport. That's pretty impressive.
Right.
That's a great answer.
Because we see guys all the time that we know. We see these elite athletes. You know, like I know this guy's going to the NFL. I saw it when he was a freshman. He's a dog. Like that guy's going. And they're normal guys. People think they're some specimen. Like, yes, they're incredibly athletically gifted. They have a drive like no one else has seen to get them to where they are. But they're still people. And so when you can, again, peel back those layers and see who they are, you're like, wow, he's a pretty cool guy. Like I don't just think of you as you're sitting on your pedestal. Like, you know, come down with us down in the Suns a little bit.
Yeah.
We have a good time.
Right. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, great time. Zach, thank you for coming out. It's been a long time putting this together, because you and I have been going back and forth about getting you on the show for a while. So I do apologize it took so long.
No problem.
Welcome back
it.
anytime.
Even though I messed up the camera.
We were walking in. I was like, this place is awesome.
Yeah.
And like I've Googled it a couple times ever since I've been listening to y'all's podcast. Like, and now I'm gonna send out a bunch of references. Like, we gotta get some people out here. Like, this is just a cool.
It's great.
spot.
Neck of the wood. Yeah. The beer is excellent.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. It's so good.
So before we close out our tab, we're just going to give a quick shout out to our sponsors once again. Virtual Orthopedics. They have you covered from runner's knee, dog walker's hip. They have a doc for that. Yard work back or laptop wrist. They also have a doc for that too. Virtual Orthopedics and Spine has over 120 providers, over 20 PT and rehab facilities, and more than 25 surgical centers all across South Jersey. So find the right specialist for you at virtual.org/ortho. Quick shout out to Neck of the Woods Brewing Company, giving us the best beers in the location in South Jersey, and Timber Reel Production, helping us put all this media together, because folks like myself and Dr. Frey wouldn't know what to do without our folks over and our guy Kyle over at Timber Reel. So thank you guys. And we'll see you next time.